So you're trying to keep pace with a business world that feels like it's rewriting the rules practically every day, right? You want the essential info, the real knowledge, without getting totally lost in endless reports. For this deep dive, we're really zeroing in on two powerful forces shaking things up: global entrepreneurship and the whole remote work revolution. We've basically sifted through a ton of the latest research to bring you the crucial insights, how these trends connect and what they actually mean for you.
Yeah, think of this as your kind of express route to understanding what's going on. We're mapping out, well, pretty much everything from the fundamental shifts in launching and running a business across borders now and, the huge acceleration of remote work, right through the real world stuff, the practicalities, the challenges, the opportunities, navigating international rules, understanding different cultures, the rise of the location independent professional, the gig economy going global, managing teams scattered everywhere, the hurdles of remote work itself, and what cutting-edge developments might be just around the corner.
Okay, great. So let's dive straight into the core of it then. When we talk about global entrepreneurship today, what's the essential idea we need to grasp?
Well, at its heart, entrepreneurship is really about spotting a previously unseen opportunity for profit. And this is key acting on it. That action, that's the real engine of economic progress. And interestingly, government policies, they can significantly nudge the rate and direction of that activity. Now, globally, the single biggest factor enabling all this has been the dramatic increase in cross-border digital connectivity. Just think. The cost of international bandwidth, for instance, has just plummeted, like over 99% in the last couple of decades. That fundamentally changes everything for remote collaboration and global market access.
Wow, over 99%. That's a staggering drop. So this hyperconnectivity, that's really the bedrock of this whole global shift.
Precisely. Yeah, it's fundamental. This readily available tech has, well, it's turbocharged globalization, leading to this unprecedented flow of not just goods, but services, capital, and really important for our chat talent and ideas. This interconnectedness is the very foundation, that the rapid expansion of remote work is built on.
And then the pandemic hit, and it just feels like everything went into hyperdrive.
Exactly. Right. The COVID-19 pandemic, it was this unforeseen catalyst, massive, you could call it a natural experiment. It basically forced widespread adoption of remote work tech and practices. Individuals saw firsthand the possibilities for different work styles, different locations, while companies. They were forced to confront the potential and the very real cost and time savings of having a distributed workforce.
Yeah.
This wasn't just some temporary blip. It's fundamentally shifted expectations around where work happens, how it gets done. In fact, some projections suggest the percentage of fully remote roles could, well, maybe even double within the next 5 years.
So we're essentially operating in a kind of borderless world for business in this digital age. Sounds exciting, but maybe a bit overwhelming too. Where do you even start to get a handle on it?
Yeah, it can seem that way. Research points to a kind of foundational three-part approach. First, it needs a fundamental rethink of boundaries, recognizing that old geographic limits, they're becoming increasingly irrelevant. Second, it's about thinking up business models that are basically built for a global market right from the start. And third, maybe the most critical part, it's about taking decisive action, actually venturing into this new reality.
It's almost like we've gone from selling to the neighborhood to having the entire planet as potential customers.
That's a great way to put it. The shift is from that geographically contained marketplace to a truly global one. What's interesting, though, is while the number of businesses with global reach has exploded, a lot of the demand still tends to cluster in specific regions. But, with each new generation being more mobile, more digitally native, that balance between global supply and demand is constantly shifting.
Okay, so if you're an entrepreneur looking at this global landscape, where do you even begin? How do you spot those key opportunities? The scale is just daunting.
Yeah, it can feel huge. The research consistently highlights the importance of really understanding specific local markets, particularly those in emerging economies. These are nations seeing rapid growth in national income. Think countries like, say, Indonesia, Vietnam, parts of Africa now. It's moving beyond just the old brick idea. What really sets them apart from, say, developing countries is this dynamic growth path they're on.
Right. And what are some of the crucial things a global entrepreneur needs to understand when looking at these emerging economies? What's different on the ground?
Well, the characteristics of the labor supply, the workforce, can be quite different. Educational systems, the common skill sets, they might vary compared to, say, the US or Western Europe. This can sometimes lead to skill gaps, even among people with good qualifications on paper. and maybe less familiarity with certain digital tools or collaboration platforms that are pretty standard elsewhere.
Oh, yeah. Like, someone might have a strong theoretical background, sure, but maybe limited hands-on time with specific project management software, for example.
That's a really key insight. You can't just assume everyone uses the same tools or has the same practical experience globally. Now, okay, beyond understanding the markets, what about the legal stuff and the cultural complexities? That sounds like a minefield.
Oh, absolutely crucial areas, both for the entrepreneurs themselves and for companies hiring international remote workers. Navigating the legal side needs real attention. A primary decision is your business's legal structure. That directly hits your taxes, your liability. Whether you operate as a sole trader with international clients or set up something more formal, it has big consequences down the line.
And I guess formal agreements, contracts become even more critical when you're dealing across borders. Oh, definitely. Well-defined written contracts aren't just like advisable. They're pretty much essential. They help prevent misunderstandings, establish professional ground rules. It doesn't matter how good the relationship feels. Having terms clearly documented protects everyone, especially when you're operating under different legal systems.
Makes sense. What about protecting your ideas, your intellectual property, when your business is spread out globally?
Yeah, intellectual property protection, IP, it's paramount if you want to keep a competitive edge. Trademarks, safeguarding your brand identity, and trade secrets, protecting your confidential methods and info, they require proactive steps. For example, registering a trademark internationally, maybe through systems like the Madrid Protocol, can simplify protection across multiple countries. And having really robust internal procedures to guard trade secrets is vital when you've got distributed teams. Honestly, getting expert legal advice here, it's non-negotiable.
Okay, legal frameworks are one layer, but navigating different cultures, that feels like an even trickier, more nuanced challenge.
It is. And cultural intelligence, CQ, it's really a cornerstone of successful global ventures. It's about recognizing that cultures aren't static things. They're dynamic, always evolving systems of shared values, shared norms. So effective cross-cultural interaction, it goes way beyond just surface stuff, like knowing basic etiquette. It requires really understanding the underlying beliefs, the assumptions that actually drive people's behavior.
So it's much more than just knowing a few polite phrases or when to bow.
Exactly. It's about trying to grasp the motivations, the sort of underlying logic, the different worldviews that shape how people from various cultures approach work, communication, relationships, everything. And your own cultural lens, it can easily lead you astray. We often unconsciously assume our own cultural norms are just normal, universal, which of course can lead to significant, sometimes costly, mistakes in judgment. Understanding their framework and realizing business practices themselves are culturally shaped is key.
That's so important to remember. Okay, let's pivot a bit. Let's talk about the digital nomad phenomenon. It really feels like it's become a defining image of this new work era, doesn't it?
It really has captured the popular imagination, yeah. The whole digital nomad trend, it's gained serious momentum, obviously fueled by that pandemic-driven shift towards location flexibility. The appeal is strong, right? Choosing where you live based on lifestyle, not just where the job is. Interestingly, though, while you see it all over social media, rigorous academic research specifically on digital nomads is still, well, kind of in its early stages. But thankfully, established fields like remote work studies give us a good foundation to understand it.
And how does this idea of global entrepreneurship connect with the rise of these digital nomads? Are they the same thing?
Not exactly, but they're closely related. Global entrepreneurship, as current research often defines it, involves organizations that operate and serve markets in multiple countries, but without necessarily having that traditional multinational corporate structure, with ownership, all based in one place. Digital nomads themselves, they can be key players in this, either as the founders or as essential parts of these geographically spread out businesses.
Okay, so if you are a digital nomad, maybe running a business or working for one of these global setups, what are the big things to consider when managing a team scattered across continents?
Research points to several critical areas for managing these distributed teams effectively. It includes things like strategic location choices, not just for cost savings, but maybe for accessing specific skills or getting closer to certain markets. It also means designing an organizational structure that actually supports remote collaboration, fostering a company culture that works across distances, and figuring out motivation strategies that click with diverse groups. And a really solid cost-benefit analysis of location is absolutely vital.
Cost-benefit analysis makes total sense. It's not just about finding the cheapest place to live or hire.
Exactly right. Companies need to weigh those financial savings against other factors,
Mm.
like market proximity, potential revenue streams, access to specific talent pools, even intangible things like, does this time zone work for our key collaborations? This analysis should really guide both the big strategic moves and the day-to-day team distribution.
Now, for the digital nomads themselves, I imagine the reality of balancing work and travel must be quite different from the pictures we see on Instagram.
Oh, indeed. While the idea of working from a beach in Bali is alluring, staying consistently productive takes real intentionality. Research suggests that setting up firm routines, having non-negotiable work habits, that's crucial. It helps integrate work into the nomadic lifestyle properly so you're not just in perpetual tourist mode. Finding that sustainable rhythm, balancing work with the new environment, that's the key.
Makes sense. What are some of the essential digital tools or platforms that help digital nomads actually navigate this lifestyle day to day?
Yeah, there's a whole toolkit that's become pretty indispensable. Things like platforms for finding accommodation, both short-term and longer-term. Social media groups are huge for local rentals and expat networks. Location sharing apps for coordination, sometimes safety. Communication tools built for working across time zones, asynchronously. Even things like mindfulness or well-being apps to help adapt to new places. And interestingly, people often consistently use familiar apps from back home, banking, news, whatever. It helps maintain a sense of stability, routine.
That's interesting. Okay, let's shift focus slightly to the global freelancing scene. It really feels like the gig economy has properly gone global now.
Absolutely. Freelancing is, it's one of the fastest growing ways people work worldwide, across pretty much every sector. This growth is driven by a mix of things. Individuals wanting more autonomy, more flexibility, and the pandemic just massively accelerated businesses getting comfortable with remote work, which boosted demand for freelancers. And notably, right now, the demand for skilled remote freelancers often seems to outstrip the available supply.
Hmm, that sounds like a significant opportunity, especially maybe for skilled people in developing countries.
It really does, yeah. Despite potential hurdles some applicants from developing nations might face, maybe around application quality expectations or familiarity with certain professional norms, the sheer global demand means companies are often more willing to invest time in onboarding and development to get the talent they need.
So, for someone wanting to tap into this global freelance market, where do they start? How do you find clients online?
Well, the recommended approach is often to start small, maybe with niche platforms that cater specifically to your expertise. Building a solid reputation and a portfolio in a specialized area first can give you a really strong foundation. Then, once you're established, you can think about expanding onto the bigger, more general freelance marketplaces. Although it's worth saying, newcomers on those massive platforms might find the competition pretty stiff initially.
Right. And how should global freelancers approach setting their rates, especially when you're dealing with clients in completely different economic situations?
Yeah, that's a common question. The two main ways are usually hourly rates or fixed fees per project. Transparency in your pricing, being clear about it, is crucial, even if you're open to some negotiation. Now, some clients might expect remote work to automatically be cheaper, right? They might try to push rates down, especially for things like writing or data entry. But it's generally better practice to try and maintain a consistent hourly rate for similar kinds of work. It ensures you're fairly compensated. Maybe having clear rate cards ready to show can help with that comparison too.
And in such a crowded online space, how vital is it for freelancers to really build a strong personal brand?
Oh, it's absolutely essential if you want to stand out. Building a personal brand means clearly articulating your unique value. What specific skills, experiences, perspectives do you bring? It also means defining the kinds of projects and clients you're best suited for, and then effectively communicating the actual benefits you deliver through your online profiles, your interactions, everything.
Okay, let's explore side hustles now. The move towards more flexible work seems to have really opened up doors for people starting things on the side.
It really has, yes. The wider adoption of flexible work has created this fertile ground for people to experiment entrepreneurially, to grow side hustles. We've definitely seen a significant rise in individuals pursuing their own business ideas alongside a main job. And those global online marketplaces, the ones connecting businesses with freelancers for short projects, they're a great place to spot potentially profitable side hustles, often with quite good profit margins too, especially if you can leverage cost of living differences.
Right. But for someone juggling, say, a full-time job and trying to get a side hustle off the ground, time management must be absolutely critical.
Oh, absolutely critical.
Yeah.
to avoid burnout and make sure the venture is actually viable long term. Entrepreneurs really need solid time management strategies. That means things like delegating tasks if you can, setting up organized workflows, ruthlessly prioritizing high-impact activities, and diligently scheduling specific blocks of time just for focused work on that side hustle.
And if that side hustle starts really taking off, what are the key things to think about for scaling it up, maybe using these remote work principles?
Well, scaling using remote work has built-in advantages, doesn't it? Location flexibility, access to global talent. The key, I think, is to stay committed to continuous learning and actively seeking out mentors, getting support to help make those bigger strategic decisions. Turning a passion project into a real sustainable business is amazing, but it also brings new challenges. You need to keep adapting, keep learning.
Definitely. So as these remote teams and global businesses grow, how do you actually build a sense of team spirit, of cohesion when everyone's dotted around the map?
Yeah, remote team building becomes really vital. It's about combating that potential isolation and fostering a sense of shared purpose. This can involve things like organizing virtual team building games or activities, maybe creating dedicated social channels for just informal chat, and being really thoughtful about choosing communication tools that help people connect beyond just talking about tasks. Managers should also really prioritize creating opportunities for personal interaction, celebrating team wins, even virtually.
And when it comes to actually hiring and bringing on board remote workers from different countries, what are the key hurdles companies need to clear?
Well, the growing global demand for remote talent is great, gives access to a much wider skill pool, potentially lower labor costs, but it also brings complexities. You've got international labor laws, tax implications for independent contractors.
Yeah.
It gets tricky. Companies have to carefully weigh up options. Do they establish a legal entity in different countries? Or maybe partner with an employer of record service to handle the compliance side?
Right. The admin and legal side can't be ignored. And fostering actual collaboration within these remote teams, that must have its own unique challenges compared to being in an office.
It certainly does. Not having that shared physical space can lead to a feeling of disconnection. Communication can break down more easily with asynchronous work, different time zones. You miss those nonverbal cues, so strategies like building affinity through more frequent, smaller team check-ins rather than just big formal meetings can help. And using structured collaboration platforms with really clear rules and protocols is usually very effective.
And finally, managing these remote teams effectively, it must demand a different kind of leadership style compared to managing people you see every day.
Absolutely. Managers need to be super aware of potential communication barriers, cultural differences in style, in tone, how things are interpreted, and just the practical headaches of time zones. Patience, empathy, and a real commitment to clear, thorough, documented communication are just paramount. Over-communicating key info, especially in writing, and being really mindful of cultural nuances in language. Crucial for building trust and stopping misunderstandings before they start.
This has been incredibly thorough. Okay,
Yeah.
so despite all the benefits we've talked about, what are some of the biggest hurdles people and companies actually face with remote work?
Yeah, several key challenges pop up again and again in research. Feelings of loneliness, social isolation. They could definitely creep in, even if you're spending more time with family at home. Just staying focused and productive with all the home distractions can be tough. It takes proactive effort, like setting up a dedicated workspace using productivity tools. And sometimes, remote workers can feel a bit invisible, like they lack recognition from company leadership.
And that clear, effective communication we mentioned, it becomes even more critical remotely, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Basic things, like ensuring good quality video and audio for meetings, are fundamental. Being mindful of your speaking speed, understanding different accents, picking up on cultural communication cues, it all requires more conscious effort. The focus really needs to be on simple, direct language. Taking meticulous meeting notes with clear action items, avoiding jargon, using clear, well-structured emails.
And maintaining that healthy work-life balance, that can be a real struggle when your office is also your living room.
It certainly can, yeah. Effective strategies usually involve setting really clear boundaries between work time and personal time, maybe using time tracking software just to see where the hours are going,
Yeah.
actively scheduling non-work stuff, and consciously having no work talk zones or times at home.
And how can remote workers and teams really tackle those potential feelings of isolation?
Well, it's important to kind of differentiate between just being alone and actually feeling lonely. Intentional efforts to create social connection are key, even through informal virtual chats, water cooler moments online. Having exploratory discussions with colleagues that aren't just about the immediate task can help build stronger relationships and reduce that feeling of isolation. Investing time in those virtual connections is really crucial, both for individuals and for the team's overall health.
Looking ahead now towards the future, what key trends do you see shaping this landscape of remote work and global entrepreneurship?
Well, remote work is definitely here to stay. It's a long-term trend now. We'll likely see hybrid models become increasingly common. Organizations will really need to prioritize understanding and accommodating what different employees actually prefer in terms of work arrangements. We'll probably also see a continued decentralization of where companies physically operate, less focus on massive central HQs perhaps. Tech advancements too, especially AI-powered translation, machine learning for analyzing global markets, that's going to further empower global entrepreneurs, though honestly we need more research to fully grasp the impact there.
And how do you think our work cultures themselves will adapt to all this?
I think fostering positive societal attitudes towards entrepreneurship generally will remain really critical for economic growth. Initiatives like the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, GEM, they'll keep giving us valuable data on how people perceive entrepreneurship in different countries. That helps inform policies designed to boost innovation.
And lastly, with more people working remotely, what broader impact could this have on our cities, on urban development?
That's a big question. The impact will probably be quite varied. Cities with lots of remote-friendly jobs might see different shifts compared to cities with less adaptable economies. While there were early worries about, the death of major cities, generally cities seem pretty resilient. What we might see is more of a redistribution of economic activity. Maybe some smaller or secondary cities could see growth as remote workers choose to relocate there. So in essence, what we've explored is how these intertwined forces, global entrepreneurship and remote work, are fundamentally reshaping, well, our professional lives, our personal lives too. These aren't static things. They're dynamic, constantly evolving landscapes. And they offer both amazing opportunities and pretty significant challenges for individuals, for organizations, navigating this new era.
Right. So, as you, the listener, process all these insights, maybe the most compelling question to think about is, how will you integrate this understanding into what you do? Will you maybe explore new global ventures? Will you approach remote work with a fresh perspective on its potential and maybe its pitfalls? The terrain is definitely ripe for innovation, for
Mm.
adaptation. And this deep dive, well, it's really just the beginning of getting a handle on these huge transformative forces. We really encourage you to keep exploring these ideas and maybe even share your own experiences or questions as this exciting future continues to unfold.